In lesson 2 for CIST 2510, we're going to talk about HTML basics. First, we'll talk a little bit about the history of HTML. HTML was first invented in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee. He was a computer scientist working for the CERN Institute laboratory in Switzerland. So they invented this technology. Um, it helped the internet expand. They invented the first browser. And so this was shared to as an attempt to get the scientific community and others to adapt them and engage in the development of the browsers and the HTML language themselves. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So in this chapter, you review the history of HTML, the adoption of HTML5, and the future. We're also going to talk about the lessons, we have a table of most frequently used HTML tags. And we're going to look at several of the new elements that are listed for HTML5. So we'll start off by looking at the structure of an HTML5 document as we see on the screen here. Your HTML is going to be made up of tags. So we see here that we start with a HTML tags. So it's our opening, it's our root tags. Inside of those, you will have two sections. You'll have a head and a body section. The head section is going to have information about the page, while the body is going to be what is viewable to the user. So the head will have items such as the title, links to a CSS sheet, a JavaScript sheet, things of that nature, while the body will have what is actually being used and being viewed by the user, such as you see here. The H1 tags is a heading tag. It says, "Welcome to my first web page." So as I've said, web pages is a text file. It's written in HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language. That describes the content and structure of a document. It identifies or tags different document elements. So usually you're going to have, when you're HTML, you're going to have a doc type declaring this as an HTML document. So this should be what you see at the top of your screen. And here you have element tags. These are the fundamental building blocks in every HTML document. You'll have a starting tag and an ending tag. Okay, we'll see the format for these tags here. So our starting tag, we'll see that we have the braces and then the element, and then the closing tag here with the slash will indicate that it is the closing. So our general syntax is we have our opening tag, we have the content that goes inside of that tag, and then we close the tag. So the example we're looking at here, this code marks a paragraph element. So we have the welcome to Dreamweaver paragraph. Now, if we have an empty element, such as you see here, these are either non-textual, which are images, or they contain directed to the browsers. So this is a break. It's going to put a line break in the text. And we'll see these in practice as we go through the course. As I've mentioned, it's broken down into two main sections. Your HTML document, you have a head and a body. Head element marks information about the document. The body is going to have the content that's going to appear in the web page. Now with this, the body is always going to be placed after the head element. So we'll see some frequently used HTML tags. We're not going to go through each one of these right now. They are in your text. So we'll see that we have the body tag, designates the body document. BR is a break tag. The div tag is a division. Okay, so this is going to break this web page into different types of sections. The A tag, that is an anchor tag. Okay, so that is your building block for a hyperlink. And we'll take an example, we'll look at an example of these as well. A form tag will be used to place a form. We have a HR, it's a horizontal rule that's going to generate a visible horizontal line. We have a head section that's going to designate the document head. So we have the head, the body. We have input is going to be an input element. This is something we put for like a form or a text field. A list item, we'll go over list. A list item is going to designate an element within an HTML list. When we put a list item, we're going to generally design these as either ordered list or unordered list, and then these will be the options that will be in that list, or the items that will be in those lists. We have a paragraph tag. It designates a standalone paragraph. The OL will be the ordered list. So this is going to put the list in a alpha or numeric or Roman numeral sequence. Strong, this is going to make it look bold. So it's going to make our text being bold. Keep in mind, though, if we open a tag, we need to make sure we close it. So if we open a tag and we put a strong element in and we don't close it, that will go through the rest of our text. Same with the rest of these. TD is for your table datas. We'll define a table. We'll put our table heads, table rows, table datas. Table data is going to designate a table cell. The row will be the row of tables. And UL is going to create our unordered list. Now, as we go through the book and through this course, you will be using each one of these tags. You can also use HTML to create characters. For example, the copyright symbol. Okay, so we could use the name, the and symbol, copy, to put this into our HTML code. We can also use the number. And you can go to the w3schools.com and see a complete list and descriptions of each one of these characters. The w3schools.com is going to be your best friend in web design. They have a lot of great resources. If you have questions about code or how to do something, it's the first place I'll look when I have questions myself. Now with HTML5, we do have some important new tags. A couple of these that we're going to talk about is, for example, the article that designates independent self-contained content. It can be distributed independently from the rest of the page or the site. We have a header and footer section. It's going to define a head section or content that's going to introduce a document. The footer is going to designate the footer of a document section. The main element designates the unique content of the page. The nav element is where we're going to have our navigation. It's going to designate a group for navigation links. Section designates a section within the content of a document. Source is going to designate media sources. Video will designate video content, such as movie clips or other video streams. All right, so we're going to take a look at some HTML code. So I'm going to open up just Google. And when I right click, I can come down to view page source. Okay, so this is going to open up the HTML code. Okay, you see there's not a lot here, which is because everything is going to be linked into these style sheets with this web page. Okay, so we do have our head section. Notice we have our closing section. Inside the head section, we do have different tags. A meta tag, the title, because we see the title is new tab, and we see that located here on our web page. So inside the style, this is our formatting. We will talk about this when we get into our CSS. Now you see that we have some links down here that's referencing style sheets. So if we click on these style sheets, we can actually view the information that is stored on that sheet. Okay, so we will get more into these as we go through the chapters. So I'm going to pull up a website. Uh, all right, so this is a website for another course that I teach. In this course, they build this website. So we'll look at the source code of this. So I'm going to right click and go to view page source. So in this, we'll see that we do have our document type. It's defined as HTML. Okay, then we have our HTML tags, and we'll see that we have our opening tag, and at the bottom we have our closing tag. Now, with inside those HTML tags, we do have our head and our body sections. So looking at the head section, we're going to have documentation about the web page. The first thing you'll see that we have the book information about the file. This is our comments. Okay, so this means that the browser does not interpret or execute this section of code. Okay, so it's a good idea, good practice to get in the habit of going ahead and starting to comment your code so that you or the person that comes after you working on the code will know what's going on in that section. All right, so a couple other things we have here. We have some metadata, and we're going to set the character set. We're going to set the viewport. So what's going on in this part of the code here is we're setting this based on the device that's being used to read the web page, whether it's a mobile device, a desktop, tablet. Okay, in the title that we have listed here, we'll see that we have Hamilton Conference Center schedule, which is what we'll see in the tab located here. Then we have some links to some style sheets that we're not going to get into in this lesson. Then we close our head section. Now, once we close our head section, we're going to immediately follow that with the opening of the body section. Now, in here, we do have a header image. Okay, so we have an image that's being loaded into our web page. And then we have an alt tag for the image. So if for some reason this part here, this is an image, if this picture does not load, this is what will be seen. And also, if someone is using a screen reader and they scroll over this image, this is what is being read out to them. So this is an accessibility issue. You need to make sure that your websites are accessible. And this is one way that we can be in compliance with that. Now, the next tag we talked about was the nav. I mentioned that it was used for navigation purposes. So we're building our navigation. Right now, we're building these links. All these links will not take us to a place right now, as we see that we only have this web page developed. So if I click on one of these links, nothing is actually happening. And we see on the code here that in our navigation, we're having an unordered list created, and they're creating a list item. Now, each one of these list items are our navigation. So a home page, reservation, facilities, virtual tour, and so forth. So with this, there's actually no link being created right here. Okay, so if we actually had a home page or the reservations, facilities pages, okay, this is where the link to those pages will be placed. Let me pull up a later Okay, so in that course, they don't actually have those. We pulled up a real website that's working, ESPN.com. See what we do have our navigation. Now this code is going to be a little more intense than what we have looked at. We will see here we have in our links that they do have in the reference links to actual websites. So looking at our nav, and I'm just doing a quick search here to find the nav. See that I have 2,845 of a NAV. And it's only searching NA for some reason. As that page has died on me. So we'll try this again. Instead of searching through the page, I'm just going to scroll down. So we'll see our nav ID. Okay, so we reached the end of the header. All right, so their code's a little bit too extensive to go through in this quick lesson. So, but when we put a link in, we will put the link in this area here. Okay, so once we open a tag, remember we've got to close it. So even though we have our list items, so we open our list item. These are nested tags. Nested tags are tags that reside within another tag. So we have our list item. In there we have our anchor tags, and then we close the list item. And so we also, once we're finished with our navigation area, make sure that we close that. So we also mentioned tables. So we have a table. IDs we'll talk about later. In here we have a caption to the table. So we have our table. The caption is reservations for conference room. As we see the caption listed here. So in here now we have different column groups set up. We talked about table rows. And TH is, those are the table heads. TD is the data that's going into that cell. When we talk about the column span, and we said it's at 4, so we're telling it to span 4 columns, go across 4 columns. So the marriage encounter goes across all 4 of these columns. We then created sections. We've talked about down here at the footer. This is areas, for example, the address. These are HTML5 tags that we can use in here. These are tags that were designated. This is the address. You can use a telephone tag, for example, if you're viewing this on a cell phone, a mobile device. If you put the tel tag on here, that makes this to where it is a dialable number, so someone can just click the number and dial the number. And once again, we close the body tag. Okay, so we're saying we're done with what is going to be visible to the user, and after we close the body tag, we're going to close our HTML. Now, the W3 schools that we have mentioned, we're going to quickly look at those. All right, so with the W3, we do have references. You have all kinds of different HTML, CSS, JavaScript, character sets that we talked about. So if I want to see a character set, so if I'm looking for symbols, say I want to draw an arrow using HTML. So it sees here that I've got the code to draw these arrows. Now with the W3 schools, you also have these try it yourselves, which allow you to bring up HTML code, and then you can run the code and display it. So let's look at a HTML forms, for example. So I see the example, and here I'll get some more explanation about how the syntax of a form is laid out. I'll get different information about the input types, and then I can try this myself. So I see the information here. So I can see that I've got a form, and I got a form box, text box area for first name. So the value here, this is the value that I can set as my default value. So say as I run that, the changes take place over here. Now, if I was an actual user, what is over here in the text input field is what they would see on the browser. So definitely check out the W3 schools for any of your HTML questions, any resources you need. That is a great place to visit for any web design. Now, one thing I also want to bring up is that there are validators. So you can run your HTML code through an HTML validator. We go W3C markup service, validation service. Now in here you can, if you have a website that's live, you can run your code through here. You can upload a file and have it check, or we can go validate this by direct input. I'm going to do the validate by direct input. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to copy my HTML code. And I'm going to just paste this in here and hit check. Now it'll run through the validation services. It may give me some warnings that it doesn't like how some stuff is set up. It'll show me then the source code and where in the code it doesn't necessarily like that information, or if something is completely wrong, it will tell me what did not pass the validation. Now keep in mind though that just because something passes a validation does not mean it's correct. For example, if I misspell Mitchell Theater, okay, it is not checking in validation that for misspellings. Okay, so it will not flag this as a misspelled word. What the validation is checking is for my tags and to make sure that my syntax is correct.